If you ever find a child dying in the snow on a world that isn't yours, you learn very quickly what kind of person you really are. The wind over the frozen plains of Kepler 442c sounded like a freight train tearing across open land, carrying needles of ice that stung Ryan Carter's faceplate even through the visor of his worn survey helmet. The temperature warning blinked red on his wrist display, -42°F and dropping. His cargo crawler idled behind him, its engine humming like a tired animal while the pale blue horizon stretched empty in every direction. Ryan had only come out here to check a seismic beacon that had gone silent during the night shift. Outposts failed all the time on this colony. Sensors froze. Power cells cracked. Usually the job took 10 minutes and a wrench. But tonight the silence felt different, like the planet itself was holding its breath. Then his scanner chirped. Once. A faint biological signal. Ryan frowned and tapped the device again. The screen flickered, struggling against the cold, then displayed a reading so weak it almost looked like static. Heartbeat, irregular. Temperature, critical. Not human. Ryan turned slowly toward a cluster of shattered crystal rock about 30 yards away. That can't be right, he muttered. No alien settlements existed within 200 miles of the mining zone. Official maps said this region was empty tundra and wind. Yet the scanner chirped again. Ryan trudged through knee-deep powder, each step crunching like breaking glass. As he rounded the rocks, the wind suddenly dropped for a moment, and the scanner tone rose into a frantic beep. That was when he saw her. A small figure half buried beneath drifting snow, skin the color of deep sapphire, faint lines of light glowing beneath it like tiny rivers of electricity. A child. Alien, unmistakably. She couldn't have been more than 4 feet tall, curled slightly as if trying to stay warm, her breathing so shallow the scanner barely caught it. Ryan froze. "You've got to be kidding me," he whispered. He knelt, brushing snow away with gloved hands. The girl's skin was cold but not frozen, her pulse fluttering against his sensor pad like a weak echo. Something metallic lay nearby, fragments of a small shuttle hull, torn open as if it had fallen out of the sky. Ryan looked up instinctively, scanning the empty clouds. No ships. No signals. Just the endless storm. His scanner beeped again and a warning flashed, circulatory failure imminent. Ryan's stomach tightened. Alien biology wasn't his field, but he had enough medical training from his old rescue corps days to recognize the pattern. Blood loss. Severe. Whatever had happened here, the girl didn't have long. "All right," he murmured, forcing calm into his voice even though no one could hear him. "Let's think." He ran the scanner again, this time analyzing cellular structure. The results made his brow crease deeper. Her blood chemistry was nothing like human physiology, complex metallic proteins, strange oxygen carriers he'd never seen before. No colony medkit would match it. Even alien hospitals struggled with cross-species transfusions. Ryan exhaled slowly, watching the vapor fog inside his helmet. "So what were you doing out here, kid?" The girl didn't respond, but her glowing veins dimmed slightly, the scanner tone weakening with each passing second. Ryan's gaze drifted to the medical injector clipped to his belt. Emergency transfusion unit. Universal type O, human. The odds of compatibility were terrible. Maybe worse. But the scanner kept beeping. Slower now. Ryan looked at the small figure again, at the fragile rise and fall of her chest, and something in his expression hardened. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Figures." He pulled the injector free and rolled back the sleeve of his thermal suit. As the needle hissed to life, Ryan gave a short, humorless laugh. "Guess we're about to find out what human blood does on another planet." And somewhere far above the storm clouds, unseen by Ryan Carter, the silent sensors of a distant alien fleet suddenly detected a signal that had not appeared anywhere in their recorded history. Ryan Carter expected the injector to beep with an error the moment human blood entered the alien child system, but the warning never came. Instead, the small display on the device flickered, recalibrated, and then showed something that made him stare twice just to be sure he was reading it correctly, because the girl's heartbeat was rising instead of fading, climbing slowly from a fragile 38 beats per minute towards something steadier as the faint golden glow under her sapphire skin grew brighter like sunrise beneath ice. Ryan blinked and leaned closer, breath fogging the inside of his visor, while the scanner chirped in confused little tones as if the machine itself could not decide whether the data was wrong or the universe had suddenly decided to change the rules. That is not how cross-species transfusion works, he muttered quietly, remembering every emergency training lecture he had ever slept through back in the Rescue Corps, all of which had one simple message repeated over and over again: do not mix alien blood with human blood unless you want a medical disaster. Yet the small alien girl lying in the snow did not look like a disaster. She looked warmer, the glow under her skin spreading in delicate branching lines that reminded Ryan of lightning frozen inside crystal. The scanner ran another automatic analysis and a new message appeared across the screen: cellular stabilization detected. Ryan let out a slow breath he did not realize he had been holding and leaned back on his heels, snow crunching beneath the metal plates of his boots. Okay kid, he said softly, either you are tougher than you look or I just broke several chapters of biology. The wind returned a moment later, sweeping across the plain with a hollow roar that rattled the fragments of the shattered shuttle scattered around them, and Ryan suddenly remembered something important. Whatever had brought this child crashing down here might still be nearby. He lifted his scanner and ran a wider sweep across the frozen valley, expecting nothing but empty terrain. Instead, the screen filled with signals so strong the device emitted a sharp warning tone. Ryan froze. High above the storm cloud something enormous had just entered orbit. Dozens of energy signatures appeared in perfect formation, far too organized to be natural and far too powerful to belong to any mining company operating on this world. Ryan slowly stood, snow swirling around his legs as the scanner updated the data again. Unidentified vessels approaching atmosphere. Estimated arrival time, less than 2 minutes. Well, Ryan said quietly, glancing down at the alien child whose breathing had grown steadier beneath the thin blanket of frost. I am guessing those are your people. The girl stirred slightly for the first time since he had found her, her small hand twitching against the frozen ground as if reacting to something distant. The glow in her veins pulsed once, brighter than before, and Ryan noticed another change that made the back of his neck tighten with unease. The scanner had started comparing her blood sample to his own, and instead of rejecting the match the machine displayed a compatibility rating that should have been impossible, 98% metabolic harmony. Ryan stared at the number for several seconds. No way, he whispered. The sky answered him with a distant thunder that was not thunder at all but the deep vibration of engines larger than anything the colony possessed. A dark shape broke through the storm clouds, followed by another and another until the pale sky above the tundra filled with descending lights. Ryan felt very small standing there beside his idling crawler and the recovering alien child, because whatever civilization those ships belonged to clearly had power far beyond anything a lone human survey tech was supposed to deal with. The first vessel slowed above the plain, silent and graceful despite its enormous size, and a beam of pale blue light swept across the ground until it stopped directly on Ryan Carter. His scanner chirped again. With a final new message, diplomatic contact protocol detected. Ryan looked up into the swirling storm, then down at the small alien girl beside him, and sighed softly. All right, he murmured, first contact it is. The first thing Ryan Carter noticed when the alien ship opened was the silence, not the empty silence of the frozen tundra behind him, but a deep controlled quiet like the inside of a cathedral, where even the storm outside seemed to fade into nothing the moment the ramp unfolded from the enormous vessel hovering 50 feet above the ice. Pale blue light spilled downward in a steady column that made the drifting snow sparkle like glass dust, and Ryan instinctively shielded his eyes as the beam swept across him and the small alien girl beside him as if measuring every molecule in his body. His scanner vibrated again on his wrist, overwhelmed by signals that were far beyond the range of colonial equipment. Ryan had worked around mining transports and cargo haulers for years, but this ship was something entirely different. Its curved metallic surface glowing faintly with patterns that looked less like machinery and more like living crystal slowly breathing in the cold air. Then figures appeared inside the light. Tall silhouettes moved with a kind of calm precision down the ramp, their shapes unfamiliar yet unmistakably intelligent. Ryan felt his pulse climb as 4 of them stepped onto the ice, each wearing sleek armor that shimmered with shifting colors like oil on water. Their helmets were transparent, revealing faces that looked both alien and strangely graceful, skin the same deep sapphire tone as the child he had found. None of them spoke at first. Instead, one raised a small device that projected a soft humming field around Ryan and the girl, and the air filled with faint geometric patterns of light scanning across their bodies. Ryan stood very still, remembering every first contact briefing he had skimmed through during colony orientation. Do not reach suddenly, do not make aggressive movements, do not assume their technology works the same way yours does. One of the aliens finally stepped forward, slightly taller than the others, and when the being spoke, the voice came through Ryan's helmet speakers after a brief delay as the translation system struggled to interpret the language. Human identified. The calm voice said, precise but curious, subject alive. Royal Air located. Ryan blinked. Royal Air. He looked down at the girl again, realizing for the first time that the child he had pulled from the snow might not belong to some random alien family after all. The alien soldier knelt beside her and held a glowing instrument above her chest. The device emitted a soft harmonic tone that shifted when it passed over the faint golden light inside her veins. The alien's posture changed immediately, and Ryan noticed the others stiffen slightly as if reacting to new information flowing through their helmets. The one holding the scanner slowly turned toward Ryan Carter. The translated voice spoke again, but this time the calm tone carried unmistakable surprise. Biological anomaly detected. Human blood present in royal circulation. Ryan rubbed the back of his neck inside the helmet and gave a small uneasy smile. Yeah, he said quietly, about that. The alien soldiers exchanged brief looks that Ryan could not fully interpret, yet the tension in the air became obvious. The scanning device hummed again, running deeper analysis, and a second message appeared on Ryan's own wrist screen as the two technologies unexpectedly synchronized. Compatibility ratio confirmed, metabolic integration stable. Ryan stared at the result as the alien officer slowly rose to full height, towering slightly over him in the glowing beam of the ship. The voice that came through the translator now sounded very different from before, no longer merely curious but carrying the weight of something far larger. Human Ryan Carter, the alien said carefully, reading the identification signal from his suit. You have altered the survival probability of an imperial bloodline. Ryan felt the cold wind touch the back of his neck as the massive ship hovered above the plane, and he had the sudden uncomfortable realization that whatever world he was about to step into was far bigger than a broken shuttle in the snow. The first sign that something about humans truly confused the alien soldiers appeared when the scanning field changed color. The pale geometric lines that had been calmly analyzing Ryan Carter suddenly shifted from soft blue to bright amber, and the device in the officer's hand emitted a sharp harmonic tone that did not sound like an alarm but certainly sounded like surprise. The tall alien lowered the instrument slightly and looked at Ryan again, this time not with the distant composure of a professional soldier but with visible uncertainty. The translator took an extra second before speaking, as if even the language system needed time to process what it was hearing. Recalibrating analysis, the voice announced quietly. Ryan rubbed his gloved hands together, partly from the cold and partly from nerves. He had worked around alien tech before on trade stations, but this was clearly something more advanced than anything a mining contractor was supposed to encounter during a routine shift. The scanning beam passed across him again, slower this time, tracing his chest, his arms, the injector still clipped to his belt. Numbers scrolled across his wrist display as the alien device synchronized with his equipment. Oxygen levels, temperature tolerance, metabolic rate, blood composition. Ryan glanced down and blinked as new symbols appeared beside his biological profile. Human hemoglobin identified. Catalytic interaction detected. The alien officer spoke again, but now several others stepped closer, their armor reflecting the pale storm light as they watched the results appear. Human Ryan Carter, the translated voice said carefully, your species classification is recorded as minor diplomatic civilization with limited interstellar reach. Ryan gave a small awkward shrug. Yeah, that sounds about right. The alien did not react to the humor. Instead, the scanning device projected a three-dimensional model of the alien child floating above the snow, her circulatory system glowing in delicate lines of gold and blue. Another shape appeared beside it. A simplified diagram of human blood cells. When the two images overlapped, the golden glow intensified dramatically. Ryan stared at the projection, slowly realizing what the device was trying to show him. The alien soldiers clearly realized it at the same moment. One of them spoke quickly in their own language, the tone sharper now, and the officer raised a hand to silence them while continuing to study the display. Human biological systems are considered chemically incompatible with Imperial physiology, the translator explained, yet your blood has stabilized the royal heir instead of harming her. Ryan scratched the side of his helmet. Look, I was not exactly running lab tests out here, she was freezing and I took a chance. The officer turned its gaze back toward the child, who now stirred slightly beneath the scanning light. The golden patterns under her skin pulsed once more, brighter than before. The device emitted another tone and new information appeared on Ryan's wrist. Display, adaptive integration confirmed, immune rejection, none detected. Ryan felt a slow chill that had nothing to do with the wind. He knew enough biology to understand how strange that result was. The alien officer seemed to understand even more. The translator spoke again, but now the calm voice carried unmistakable tension. Human blood is not merely compatible, the alien said slowly. It is enhancing cellular regeneration. Ryan blinked. Enhancing? The officer studied him for a long moment, as if trying to solve a puzzle that had just appeared in the middle of the frozen wilderness. Then the alien looked up toward the massive ship hovering above the tundra. The officer spoke a short message in its native language, and a second beam of light descended from the vessel, wider and brighter than the first. The translation system finally delivered the meaning. Imperial Medical Command has been notified, the voice said. Ryan exhaled slowly as the enormous ship shifted position. Above the storm, something told him that whatever had just happened out here in the snow was no longer a small accident between a human worker and a lost alien child. It had become something much bigger, and judging by the way the alien soldiers were now watching him, they had only just begun to understand how strange the human standing in front of them really was. Ryan Carter expected the aliens to take the child and disappear back into the massive ship hovering above the frozen plain, but instead a second craft descended slowly from the larger vessel, smaller yet far more intricate, its surface glowing with thin lines of silver light that shifted like living circuitry. The moment it settled above the ice, the air around Ryan warmed noticeably as a soft energy field pushed the storm back several feet in every direction. The alien officer gestured toward the craft and several new figures stepped out, different from the armored soldiers, their robes flowing with faint luminous patterns that reminded Ryan of starlight reflected on water. These newcomers carried slender instruments that projected floating screens of pale light, and the moment they approached the alien child the devices activated automatically, forming a quiet circle of scanning beams around her. Ryan stepped back instinctively, watching as the golden glow inside the girl's veins brightened again under the medical lights. The alien scientists spoke rapidly among themselves in their own language while their instruments produced delicate tones that rose and fell like music. Ryan could not understand the words, but he understood the tone perfectly, because he had heard the same mixture of excitement and disbelief many times before in human laboratories when someone realized they had just found something impossible. One of the scientists lifted a crystal-shaped scanner toward Ryan himself, asking a short question through the translator. Human Ryan Carter, remain still. Ryan raised both hands slightly and gave a cautious nod. The device hummed softly as it passed over his chest, then his arm where the injector mark still showed through the fabric of his thermal suit. New readings appeared instantly on both the alien display and Ryan's own wrist scanner. The scientist paused and ran the scan again, slower this time. Then a third time. Ryan noticed the alien tilt its head slightly, a gesture that looked almost human. Analysis inconsistent with recorded biological models, the translator reported quietly. Another scientist projected a larger hologram into the air, showing two rotating cellular structures side by side, one labeled with alien symbols and the other clearly representing human blood cells. When the models interacted in a simulation, the golden energy pattern surged through the alien structure in seconds, stabilizing damaged tissue markers that had previously been flashing critical warnings. Ryan folded his arms slowly and watched the display. Let me guess, he said softly, that is not supposed to happen. None of the aliens answered immediately, but several instruments chimed at once as more data flowed into the projection. The child's internal readings were updating in real time, showing accelerated recovery that even Ryan's limited medical knowledge recognized as extraordinary. The lead scientist finally turned toward him. the translator taking an extra second before delivering the message. Human blood contains adaptive regenerative catalysts not previously documented in Imperial Medical Archives. Ryan blinked. Catalysts. The scientist adjusted the hologram again, enlarging a cluster of human cells glowing faintly inside the alien bloodstream model. Your species possesses a biological mechanism that stimulates cellular repair across incompatible systems. Ryan stared at the projection while snow drifted quietly around the glowing circle of alien technology. The scientist's voice continued, now carrying a tone of rising urgency. If this data is correct, the implications extend beyond the survival of the royal heir. Another device chimed sharply as new signals arrived from the massive ship above. The lead scientist looked upward for a moment before turning back to Ryan Carter. The translator delivered the next sentence slowly, as if even the machine recognized the weight of what was being said. Human Ryan Carter. Your blood may represent a biological factor capable of altering imperial medicine across multiple species. Ryan exhaled slowly into the cold air and glanced down at the recovering child glowing softly beneath the scanners. For the first time since the ships appeared, he felt a deeper tension settle into his chest, because he realized something the aliens were only beginning to understand. If his blood could do that once, they were going to want to know exactly how and why, and people with ships this powerful rarely asked small questions. The moment the alien scientists finished their third round of scans, the atmosphere around Ryan Carter changed in a way he could feel even through the insulated layers of his thermal suit. The quiet curiosity that had filled the glowing circle of medical equipment slowly transformed into something heavier, something that carried the unmistakable weight of consequence. The lead scientist lifted one of the floating displays higher into the air and expanded the holographic model so it hovered nearly 6 feet wide above the frozen ground, its luminous strands showing the alien child's bloodstream weaving together with traces of human cells that pulsed with soft gold light. Several new signals arrived from the enormous vessel overhead, and Ryan noticed that the massive ship had adjusted its position again, stabilizing directly above the landing craft as if the entire operation had suddenly become far more important. One of the robed scientists spoke rapidly into a slender communication device, and the translator system struggled for a moment before projecting the meaning into Ryan's helmet speakers. Central Archive verification in progress. Ryan folded his arms against the cold and looked up at the towering hull in the sky. He had worked long enough on remote colonies to recognize when a routine situation had escalated into something official, and judging by the sudden activity among the aliens, the data they were collecting was already spreading far beyond this frozen valley. The lead scientist turned back toward him, its eyes reflecting the golden glow from the child's circulating blood sample as another hologram appeared beside the first. This one displayed lines of ancient symbols and diagrams that looked far older than the sleek technology surrounding them. The translator delivered the explanation slowly. Imperial medical history indicates that adaptive regeneration across incompatible species was theorized thousands of cycles ago but never observed. Ryan raised an eyebrow beneath his visor. So you are saying this was supposed to be impossible? The scientist tilted its head slightly, a gesture Ryan was beginning to recognize as the alien equivalent of agreement. Correct. The holographic display shifted again, revealing a series of historical models showing failed attempts to achieve cross-species biological integration. Every simulation ended the same way, with unstable reactions that collapsed within seconds. Then the model updated with Ryan's blood sample included, and the result was dramatically different. Instead of collapse, the system stabilized and expanded, the golden energy spreading through damaged cells and repairing them with surprising speed. The scientist's voice continued, now noticeably more urgent. Human biological catalysts appear capable of activating dormant regenerative pathways within imperial physiology. Ryan stared at the glowing projection, trying to process the scale of what he was hearing. Before he could respond, the child on the ground stirred more strongly, her breathing deepening as the golden patterns beneath her skin pulsed in steady rhythm. The instruments surrounding her chimed softly as new readings appeared across every screen in the circle. Stabilized circulation confirmed, cellular recovery accelerating. One of the scientists stepped closer to Ryan Carter and studied him carefully, almost the way a researcher might examine an unexpected phenomenon in a laboratory. Human Ryan Carter, the translator said slowly, your species may possess a biological key that our empire has searched for across centuries of research. Ryan let out a quiet breath and glanced toward the endless frozen horizon beyond the ships. suddenly wishing this had remained a simple repair job on a broken beacon. Above them the massive vessel emitted a deep resonance as additional signals spread outward through the fleet now assembling in orbit. Ryan realized something that made the back of his neck tighten. Whatever had just been discovered here in the snow was no longer a medical curiosity about one injured child. To a civilization with an empire and archive stretching back thousands of years, it looked a lot more like the beginning of a breakthrough that could change everything. Ryan Carter knew the moment the aliens stopped talking among themselves that something important had just changed. The lead scientist stared at the growing web of golden light inside the floating hologram and then slowly expanded another layer of data from the Imperial Archive, projecting ancient biological diagrams beside the new readings taken from the child. Thousands of years of failed experiments scrolled past in quiet glowing lines, each attempt to merge Imperial physiology with another species ending the same way: unstable reactions, cellular collapse, systems rejecting anything that was not their own. Then the simulation shifted again and inserted the trace sample taken from Ryan's blood. The entire model reorganized instantly. The golden catalyst spread through the alien cellular structure and stabilized it in seconds. Ryan watched the display while the cold wind circled the glowing medical field, and even he could see the difference without needing a degree in xenobiology. This was not just compatibility, it was cooperation. One of the younger scientists whispered something in their own language and the translator hesitated before delivering the meaning. Historical prediction sequence identified. Ryan looked up. Prediction. The lead scientist enlarged a second archive file that looked far older than the rest. The symbols etched with the kind of careful reverence normally reserved for something ancient and important. Early Imperial researchers proposed a theory that our species once possessed adaptive regeneration across multiple ecosystems. The translator explained. The ability vanished over time as our civilization stabilized its environment and biology became specialized. The hologram changed again, showing a branching evolutionary model of the Empire species slowly losing flexibility as their genetic systems optimized for a single stable physiology. Then the human blood sample was introduced into the model. The lost pathways reignited like dormant circuitry suddenly receiving power again. The golden light expanded across the projection until it illuminated every strand of alien DNA in the display. Ryan felt the uneasy realization forming in his chest even before the scientist spoke again. Your blood is not simply repairing damage, the alien said slowly. It is activating genetic pathways our species has not used in thousands of years. Ryan let out a low breath. You are saying my blood is waking something up? The scientist tilted its head again in that thoughtful way Ryan had begun to recognize. Yes. Another signal chimed across the medical instruments surrounding the child and the projection zoomed in automatically on her circulatory system. The golden energy was no longer fading after stabilization. It was integrating permanently, weaving itself into the alien biology as if it belonged there all along. One of the soldiers standing nearby shifted slightly, clearly uneasy now that the meaning of the discovery was becoming clear. The lead scientist spoke into the communication device again and a new response came from the enormous vessel hovering above the storm. When the translator delivered the message, Ryan felt the weight of the moment settle over the frozen plain. Imperial Council notified. Priority classification, evolutionary anomaly. Ryan stared at the glowing child lying quietly beneath the scanners and rubbed the back of his neck. He had come out here to fix a broken beacon, not accidentally restart someone else's evolutionary history. The scientist stepped closer to him and studied him with open fascination now. Human Ryan Carter, the translator said carefully. Our records contain no previous encounter where human biology triggered this effect. Ryan gave a tired half smile inside his helmet. Yeah, well, my day started pretty normal too. Above them the massive ship shifted again as additional vessels appeared high in orbit, their faint lights forming a quiet constellation against the darkening sky. Ryan realized something then that made the situation far bigger than a scientific mystery. If his blood could awaken something the Empire had lost thousands of years ago, then to a civilization that powerful he was no longer just a human worker standing in the snow, he had become something far more dangerous to ignore. Ryan Carter realized the aliens were no longer looking at the glowing child in the snow the same way. Moments earlier the entire operation had focused on saving the young royal heir, but now the attention had shifted, subtly yet unmistakably, toward him. The soldiers standing at the edge of the scanning field had moved closer without appearing aggressive, their posture still calm but clearly more alert than before. Above them the enormous vessel in the storm clouds released another low resonance as additional ships aligned themselves in orbit, forming a precise formation that Ryan's scanner identified as coordinated fleet positioning. He glanced at the display on his wrist and saw a dozen new signals appear one after another, each tagged with power outputs far beyond anything the mining colony possessed. The lead scientist watched the same information scroll across the holographic archive and slowly lowered its instrument. The translator spoke with measured clarity. The Imperial Council has acknowledged the discovery. Ryan gave a small breath of disbelief. That was fast. The alien did not appear amused, instead it expanded the hologram again, this time displaying a broader network of biological pathways branching across the Imperial genome model. Every pathway that had been dormant in the previous simulations now glowed faintly where the human catalyst had touched them. The scientist pointed toward the projection and the translator continued, if the catalyst effect can be replicated, the implications extend beyond individual medical treatment. Ryan folded his arms, the cold air swirling around the glowing circle of technology as he studied the display. Meaning, the scientist paused as if choosing words carefully. Imperial biology has evolved toward stability for thousands of years. The hologram shifted again, showing historical records of declining regenerative ability across generations. Your catalyst reactivates genetic flexibility that our species lost long ago. Ryan rubbed the side of his helmet slowly. So you are saying human blood makes your people heal faster? The scientist tilted its head slightly. Healing is only the first observable effect. The hologram expanded further, revealing additional projections that had just arrived from the orbiting fleet. Entire populations of alien physiology models appeared in simulation grids, each showing the same golden catalyst spreading through cellular systems. Ryan watched the pattern repeat again and again until he understood what the aliens were testing. This was no longer about one injured child, they were running empire-scale projections. One of the soldiers spoke sharply in their own language and the lead scientist acknowledged the message before turning back to Ryan Carter. The translator delivered the next statement slowly. If this catalyst can be studied and reproduced, the Empire could restore biological adaptability across multiple worlds. Ryan felt the meaning settle in his chest. Adaptability across worlds meant colonization, survival in harsher environments, expansion into regions where Imperial biology had previously struggled. The scientist continued quietly, your species may possess a biological mechanism that changes the limits of our civilization. Ryan let out a short breath and glanced at the alien child again, noticing that she had opened her eyes slightly, the golden light still faintly visible beneath her sapphire skin. The realization struck him all at once, a single emergency decision in the middle of a frozen valley had triggered attention from an entire empire. The lead scientist studied him carefully and added one final statement that carried more weight than any of the previous discoveries. Human Ryan Carter, from this moment forward you are no longer considered an incidental participant in this event. Ryan raised an eyebrow beneath his visor. Then what am I? The alien's eyes reflected the golden holographic light as the translator answered, you are now a subject of imperial interest. Ryan looked up at the enormous ships gathering in the storm-dark sky and realized something that made the cold wind feel a little sharper against his suit. When a civilization powerful enough to fill the sky decided you were important, life rarely returned to normal afterward. Ryan Carter expected the aliens to keep treating him like a biological puzzle, but something shifted the moment the young royal heir opened her eyes fully for the first time. The scanning instruments around her emitted a soft cascade of tones as her vitals stabilized, and the golden glow within her bloodstream dimmed from a bright surge to a steady gentle pulse that looked almost natural. The child turned her head slowly, her luminous eyes focusing on the unfamiliar figure standing nearby in heavy human gear, and for a moment the entire circle of alien scientists went quiet as if even their advanced technology could not interrupt the importance of the moment. Ryan hesitated before kneeling slightly so he would not tower over her. Hey there, he said softly through the helmet speakers, unsure whether she could even understand him. The translator system hesitated, then rendered the words into the alien language. The child blinked once, clearly weak but conscious, and lifted a small hand toward him with curious determination. One of the alien soldiers stepped forward instinctively, perhaps worried about protocol. But the lead scientist raised a calm hand signaling them to wait. The child's fingers gently touched the surface of Ryan's armored glove and a faint shimmer of golden light flickered where their contact met. Several instruments chirped instantly. recording the interaction. Ryan glanced up at the aliens around him with a sheepish half-smile. "I'm guessing that is another new reading for your archives." The lead scientist watched carefully while new data streamed across the floating displays. "Direct proximity to human catalyst continues to stimulate regenerative pathways," the translator explained. Quietly, the child looked up at Ryan again, studying his helmet with open fascination as if she had never seen a human before. She spoke a short sentence in her own language, her voice faint but clear. The translator took an extra second before delivering the meaning. "You are warm." Ryan blinked in surprise, then chuckled softly. "Compared to this place, that is not hard." The alien scientists exchanged glances, clearly recognizing that the interaction between the human and the child was producing measurable changes. The golden patterns in her bloodstream brightened slightly each time she remained near him. The lead scientist expanded another diagnostic field around both of them and the translator continued. "Emotional response indicators are also stabilizing the royal heir's recovery." Ryan frowned slightly. "Emotional response?" The alien tilted its head. "Your presence appears to reduce biological stress reactions." Ryan looked down at the small figure again and noticed the child had not let go of his glove. She seemed calm now, the earlier signs of weakness fading as her breathing became stronger. He felt an unexpected tightening in his chest that had nothing to do with alien science or imperial discoveries. To him she was no longer just a patient or a symbol of some ancient biological theory. She was a kid who had nearly frozen to death on an empty planet. The quiet moment was interrupted when a new signal pulsed across every display in the scanning circle. The massive ship overhead emitted a deeper resonance as a new vessel began descending through the clouds. The soldiers straightened instantly and the lead scientist looked upward with sudden respect. The translator spoke one short sentence that changed the atmosphere again. "The Royal Guardian has arrived." Ryan glanced up at the dark sky where a larger and far more elegant ship was lowering slowly through the storm, its surface glowing with patterns far more intricate than the others. He had a strong feeling that whoever was inside that vessel was not coming down to study data or examine scientific models. They were coming to see the human who had somehow changed the fate of the Empire's royal bloodline. Ryan Carter felt the entire valley grow quieter the moment the new vessel broke through the cloud layer, as if even the storm understood that something important had just arrived. The descending craft moved differently from the others, not like a military transport or a medical shuttle but with the deliberate grace of something ceremonial. Its silver hull reflecting the pale light of the frozen landscape while intricate symbols pulsed slowly across its surface. The alien soldiers standing around the scanning field straightened immediately and stepped aside in perfect formation, their attention shifting toward the ramp as it extended silently toward the ice. Ryan noticed the young royal heir still holding his glove while watching the ship with calm familiarity, which told him everything he needed to know about who was inside. When the ramp touched the ground, a single figure stepped forward, taller than the others and wearing layered robes that shimmered with faint patterns of gold and deep blue, the colors echoing the strange glow still circulating inside the child's veins. The translator activated automatically as the figure approached the medical circle, and the surrounding scientists lowered their instruments with visible respect. Ryan slowly rose to his feet, careful not to move too quickly as the newcomer stopped only a few feet away from him. The alien's gaze moved first to the child, studying the steady golden pulse within her bloodstream, and then shifted toward Ryan Carter with an intensity that made him suddenly aware of just how small a human being could feel beneath the attention of an empire. The translator delivered the words in a calm voice that carried unmistakable authority. "You are the human responsible for her survival." Ryan gave a cautious nod. "Yes, ma'am," though I was mostly trying to stop her from freezing. The alien knelt beside the child and placed a hand gently over her shoulder, and the golden glow brightened slightly as if reacting to the contact. The instruments immediately recorded the change and projected new readings across the floating displays. One of the scientists spoke quietly, and the translator relayed the explanation. "Royal genetic resonance confirmed." The newcomer looked back toward Ryan Carter and the translator continued, "Our species carries ancient regenerative potential that has remained dormant for many generations." The holographic projections shifted again, this time showing expanded models of alien biology interacting with human catalyst markers. Ryan watched the simulation run through several projected scenarios until one in particular caught his attention. The golden catalyst did not simply repair damaged cells, it stabilized new hybrid pathways that allowed alien physiology to adapt to environmental changes far beyond its previous limits. The royal figure rose slowly and looked toward the enormous fleet now visible in the darkening sky. If this effect can be understood, the translator said quietly, our people may regain abilities that disappeared thousands of years ago. Ryan rubbed the back of his neck beneath the helmet and gave a small uncertain laugh. I am starting to feel like I accidentally walked into the middle of a very important science experiment. The alien regarded him for a long moment before speaking again, and this time the translator delivered the sentence with careful precision. You have not walked into it, human Ryan Carter. The royal figure gestured toward the glowing models of genetic evolution still floating above the snow. You may be the reason it begins again. Ryan glanced down at the child still holding his glove and then back toward the massive fleet forming overhead, and for the first time since the ships arrived he realized something that made the situation far more complicated than a scientific discovery. If his blood truly had the power to awaken something ancient inside an entire civilization, then whatever decision came next would not just affect him or the small alien child beside him, it might shape the future of a species that had been waiting thousands of years for exactly this kind of moment. Ryan Carter understood the meaning of the silence before the alien royal even spoke again. The valley had become completely still except for the distant wind sliding across the frozen plains, and every alien present seemed to be waiting for the next words that would decide what happened to him next. The young royal heir was sitting up now with assistance from the medical field, the golden glow inside her bloodstream steady and calm, her small hand still resting on Ryan's armored glove as if she had decided he was the safest thing in an unfamiliar world. Above them the enormous fleet continued to grow, dozens of vessels forming a quiet constellation against the darkening sky while the royal ship hovered directly overhead like a watchful guardian. The robed figure stepped closer to Ryan Carter and studied him carefully, not with hostility but with the serious attention someone gives to a discovery that could reshape an entire civilization. The translator activated with a soft tone and delivered the words slowly, human Ryan Carter. The council has reviewed the preliminary findings from this encounter. Ryan exhaled through his helmet and gave a small nod. I figured that might happen. The alien inclined her head slightly, then gestured toward the glowing holographic projection still hovering above the snow. Your biology has awakened dormant regenerative pathways within our species. The golden models shifted again, displaying simulations of future generations where the catalyst effect expanded across imperial physiology. Ryan could see it clearly now even without scientific training, alien bodies adapting faster, healing faster, surviving environments that had once been impossible. The royal voice continued calmly, this development carries consequences beyond medical research. Ryan rubbed the back of his neck and let out a quiet breath. That is usually the part where things get complicated. The alien's gaze did not leave him. Our empire has searched for centuries for a way to restore this evolutionary potential. Another projection appeared, showing distant colonies scattered across hostile planets, where imperial settlers struggled to survive. The golden catalyst spread across the model again and the environment stabilized as alien physiology adapted to them. The message was obvious even before the translator spoke. Your presence offers a path forward for our future. Ryan felt the weight of the moment settle across his shoulders. A few hours ago he had been a technician fixing a broken beacon in the middle of nowhere. Now an empire was discussing its future because of a blood transfusion. The royal figure studied him for another long moment before delivering the sentence that changed the atmosphere completely. The council has reached a preliminary conclusion. The soldiers around them straightened slightly and the scientists paused their instruments. The translator spoke the next words with unmistakable gravity. Human Ryan Carter, you may represent the only known source of this catalyst effect. Ryan gave a slow uneasy laugh. That sounds like a lot of pressure for one guy. The alien did not smile, instead she continued calmly. Therefore the council requests your cooperation in studying this phenomenon for the benefit of our civilization. Ryan looked down at the small alien child beside him and then back toward the vast fleet in the sky. He could feel every alien present waiting for his response. The decision in front of him was suddenly much larger than his own life or career. If he agreed, he would become part of something that could reshape the empire's future. If he refused, an entire civilization might lose the only chance it had discovered in thousands of years. Ryan Carter stood quietly in the snow for a moment longer, realizing that for the first time since the ships arrived the most important choice in the entire encounter no longer belonged to the empire above him, it belonged to the human standing alone in the frozen valley. Ryan Carter stood in a frozen valley while the entire alien fleet waited for a single human answer, and for a moment he did not say anything at all. The wind moved quietly across the ice while the golden light inside the young royal heir pulsed gently beneath her sapphire skin. And the small alien girl looked up at him with calm curiosity as if she did not understand why hundreds of ships in the sky were suddenly interested in the man whose glove she was still holding. Ryan slowly removed one hand from the side of his helmet and rubbed the back of his neck, the way people do when they realize life has taken a turn they never planned for. He glanced toward the massive vessels overhead and then back toward the royal figure standing in front of him. "I have a question first," he said calmly. The translator relayed the words and the alien inclined her head slightly, signaling for him to continue. Ryan gestured toward the child beside him. "If I had not been here today, she would have died out in that storm." The royal guardian lowered her gaze briefly toward the young heir and the golden light flickered once beneath the medical scanners. "That is correct," the translator answered. Ryan nodded slowly. "Then I did not save her because I was trying to change your civilization." He paused for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "I saved her because she is a kid." The alien scientists around them exchanged quiet glances while the royal guardian studied him more closely than before, as if this explanation was not what she had expected. Ryan continued calmly, "Humans do that sometimes. We help people even when it is not part of some big plan." The translator carried the sentence across the silent valley and for a few seconds no one spoke. Then the royal figure responded quietly, "Your reasoning is unusual from the perspective of imperial decision-making." Ryan chuckled softly. "Yeah, I figured." The young alien child squeezed his glove slightly at that moment and the instruments immediately recorded another small surge in the golden catalyst effect, confirming once again that his presence was still stabilizing her recovery. Ryan looked down at her and then back up at the alien leader. "So here is my answer." The soldiers around the circle straightened subtly as the moment arrived. Ryan Carter took a slow breath and continued. "If what you are saying is true and this discovery can help your people survive or adapt to new worlds, then I am willing to help you study it." The translator carried the words across the frozen plain and a ripple of quiet reaction moved through the alien scientists. Ryan raised a hand slightly before anyone could respond. "But there is one condition." The royal guardian watched him carefully. "State it." Ryan gestured toward the child again. "You treat this like what it actually is, a chance to help people, not an excuse to control someone's life." The golden projections above the snow flickered gently while the alien leader considered the request. Finally she nodded once, slowly and deliberately. "Your condition is reasonable." Ryan let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. Above them the enormous fleet shifted formation slightly as the decision transmitted through the ships. The royal guardian spoke once more through the translator, her voice calm but carrying the weight of a new agreement. "Human Ryan Carter, your cooperation is accepted." Ryan looked up at the sky filled with alien vessels and then down at the small alien girl who was now clearly recovering. For the first time since the ships arrived he allowed himself a faint smile, because even though the future had suddenly become far more complicated, at least the choice he had made still felt like the same simple decision that started everything in the first place. The storm over the frozen valley had begun to calm by the time the final preparations were complete, and the sky that had once been empty now held an entire constellation of alien ships glimmering quietly above the ice. Ryan Carter stood beside the young royal heir while the medical scanners slowly powered down one by one, their soft tones fading into the cold air as the readings stabilized at levels that no longer triggered emergency alerts. The golden catalyst inside the child's bloodstream had settled into a steady rhythm that looked less like an anomaly now and more like a new part of her biology. The alien scientists moved with careful excitement around the fading holograms, recording every detail of the moment while the royal guardian watched in calm silence. Ryan flexed his fingers slightly inside the heavy glove that the small alien girl still refused to release, and he found himself smiling despite the unbelievable situation unfolding around him. "Looks like you are going to be all right," he said quietly. The translator relayed the words and the child looked up at him with the same calm curiosity she had shown earlier, the golden light reflecting softly in her eyes. She spoke a short sentence in her language and this time the translation arrived almost instantly. "You are part of my story now." Ryan let out a quiet breath and glanced toward the sky where the fleet hovered like a silent promise of everything that would come next. The royal guardian stepped forward and addressed him once more, her voice steady through the translator. "Human Ryan Carter, your cooperation will begin a new chapter of research between our people." The scientists nearby projected one final holographic model showing future possibilities branching outward like the limbs of a growing tree, colonies surviving on harsh planets, alien physiology adapting in ways their ancestors had once lost, entire generations benefiting from the rediscovered catalyst effect. Ryan studied the glowing projections and shook his head slowly. All of that from a single bad day fixing a broken beacon. The alien leader tilted her head slightly, the gesture carrying something that looked almost like respect. History often begins with moments that appear small at the time. Ryan looked down at the frozen ground around them, remembering the quiet valley before the ships had arrived and the simple decision that had started everything. He had not been thinking about empires or evolution when he used that injector. He had only been thinking about saving a child. The royal guardian turned toward the ship and the ramp illuminated once more as preparations to depart began. The young heir finally released Ryan's glove and stood on her own, stronger now, the golden glow still faintly visible beneath her skin like a quiet reminder of what had happened here. Before stepping away she looked back at him and lifted her hand in a small farewell gesture that felt strangely human. Ryan returned the gesture without thinking, then watched as the royal escort guided her toward the waiting ship. The fleet above slowly shifted formation as the mission concluded and the valley returned to its cold silence. Ryan Carter remained standing in the snow for a moment longer, staring up at the stars where the alien ships were already beginning to fade into distant light. Somewhere out there an empire was preparing to study the strange catalyst hidden inside human blood, searching for answers that had eluded them for thousands of years, but the truth was far simpler than the scientists would probably expect. Ryan had never intended to change the course of another civilization. He had only done what any ordinary human might do when faced with a life in danger, and perhaps that was the discovery the stars themselves had been waiting for all along, because the galaxy had spent centuries searching for new power, new technology, new ways to conquer impossible worlds, yet in the end the thing that awakened an ancient future had been something far smaller and far more human, a single choice to care.